welcome back. Today is a beautiful fall day and we are getting ready to put our gardens to sleep. So over the last 10 years, I have probably done this differently every single year. It's a process that continues to evolve. There's no one right way to do it, and really I don't think that you can do anything wrong. So we're just going to share some of the things that we're doing. My friend Julia is here again, and we're going to be working together today to start prepping some of the beds for the fall so that they can have the winter to break down, and in the spring we'll be a little bit ahead. One of the things that I used to do in the fall was pull everything out by the roots. Now I'm starting to cut a lot of the plants off and just leaving the roots in the soil, because as those roots decompose, they're feeding the soil and they're helping to keep it aerated and nice and loose. So that's something that has shifted over the years. There's some plants that we're just going to keep as they are because the seeds are food for birds over the winter and other little furry friends that might be running around trying to find some food. There's certain plants like tomatoes that tend to be prone to disease. Those ones we're going to pull out just in case there was the beginning of some kind of disease or fungus. Some people say it's better to pull those out so that any of that disease won't go into the soil. But if you leave it in, I'm sure it will be fine as well. And the last thing we're going to do is start creating new compost right on top of the gardens. So I have a compost pile in the back field up over the hill. Used to take everything from the garden, bring it all the way up the hill, made a nice compost pile, let it decompose. In the spring I'd bring it from there all the way down. That's really silly. So a lot of the plants and the leaves right now, it's so perfect because there's so many leaves. So a lot of the plant stalks and the leaves, we're just going to leave right on the gardens and let them break down. And as they're breaking down, they're feeding the soil. I tend to not put any food scraps in the gardens because it's close to the house. My food scraps I'm still going to take back into the field just so that if there's little hungry mice over the winter or other creatures that are looking for food, I'm going to encourage them to be in the backfield and not so close to my house. So let's get started.
One part of fall cleanup is digging up the bulbs that don't survive the winter. So those include the gladiola, which is what we have here, as well as our dahlias, which we will do a little bit later. There's a nice big gladiola bulb, and I'll snip that and compost this part. And this part I will wrap in newspaper and I will store it somewhere that it won't freeze. A common part of fall cleanup is getting rid of your annual vegetable plants. So here's our dead tomato plant, and I'm going to put all of this in the compost, but you could also just put this in the city compost and get rid of it, because there are tomato-borne diseases that live in the soil. So this ways it's not ideal to put in your own compost for the tomatoes. But that's why there's a lot of plants that are nice to leave for the animals and the insects over winter, but not your vegetables. Most of your vegetables, you don't want there to be more disease. So you do want to get rid of those plants from your garden. Many of the perennial flowers are the ones that are great to leave over the winter. This is echinacea, and the birds will enjoy eating the seeds, and it can provide some winter interest in the snow. So we will leave these and only cut them down in the spring, maybe in April. Here are a few more plants that we will leave in the garden. This one is blue vervain, and the birds will enjoy these seeds. This one here is a non-native butterfly bush, but again, we'll leave this one. As long as it's flowering, the monarchs might come feed from it, or the other nectar nibblers will come feed on it. And this here is our foxglove. It's a biennial, so this is our first year, didn't have any flowers, so we just leave the leaves as they are, and next year it will send up its beautiful tall flowers. This is where we grew corn this year. So we've removed all the corn stalks and we've laid some comfrey over top to be a little bit of added fertility, because corn is such a heavy feeder. We want to replenish the soil. The fall is a good time to put manure on the garden and other soil amendments as well. It's also a good time to do soil testing. In the fall we have all these wonderful leaves. The trees are giving their fertility back to the soil, so we can be grateful for that and take advantage of it for the fertility of the gardens. You can add your leaves to your compost pile. I love using the fall leaves all year. They help balance out all of my kitchen waste in my compost pile. And right now we are gathering these sugar maple leaves to put directly on the gardens, and they'll keep the soil a bit warmer and really add some fantastic organic matter so that our soil is richer next spring, next season for planting. So here are the leaves that we gathered from the sugar maple tree, and we're putting some comfrey leaves on top to hold the leaves down so they won't blow away. Once it's rained, the leaves will compact and we shouldn't blow too much, but when they're fluffy, a windstorm will blow them far away. You can also cover them with soil to keep them from blowing away.
And this is going to be really nice nutrients for the soil in the springtime. So it's like you're composting right on top of your garden. So another thing that we're trying this year for the first time is creating a large compost pile right beside our gardens and fruit trees. So normally our compost pile is in the back field, but fall is a great time, especially when you're putting all of the gardens to sleep. You have all of the leaves from the trees that are falling and all of the greens from the garden that you're not going to use anymore. So we just finished showing you how we were loading leaves and comfrey on top of the garden patch where we planted the corn. And that's going to be great because it's going to keep breaking down and putting those nutrients in that soil. But when you make a big mound like this, and I'm going to show you the finished product, the higher it is and the bigger the pile, the more heat that's created on the inside. So it will just break down a lot faster. And by making this pile here, it's going to kill the grass underneath. So we wanted to extend our little mulched area around these trees out here. So that's why we chose this location. And then the other thing is it's nice and close to the garden. So there's comfrey, there's leaves. We pulled this out of the gardens. It's chickweed that was growing everywhere. So that's going to break down nicely. We have some old plant stalks that were ready to go. That's garden balsam. We have a wheelbarrow full here. These are some squash vines that are no longer needed, and some other, this one here is bitter melon vines, and some old plant stalks. So all of that is really good. Typically, the brown dried plant material is high in carbon, and anything that's green and moist tends to be high in nitrogen, and both of those are really important for healthy soil and healthy plants. So by putting a mixture of dried brown and green plant materials, we're going to have really beautiful organic soil. We are mixing soil in with this as well, which is just going to speed down the speed up the breaking down process.
This is an apricot tree that we planted this spring, and it's important to put a tree guard on for the winter, because in the winter is when the rodents are going to come and eat the bark and potentially kill the tree. So I'm putting this tree guard on right now, but it's also important to take your tree guards off in the spring. It's important not to leave tree guards on forever, because trees get wider and the plastic does end up doing damage to trees in the long run if you've left them on for years and years and years.
So I hope that was helpful, and good luck putting your own gardens to sleep. If you guys have any kind of tricks or things that you guys do for your gardens, please write them in the comments below, and we can share our knowledge and our little tips and tricks with each other. Have fun in your gardens.